our community, particularly the African American conscious community, the title of Queen Mother is one that is very revered. There are very few women in the history of the Black American community, certainly here in New York, who have been referred to as Queen Mother, is because there's no one who I can think of emerging from the Muslim community amongst Black Americans who's more deserving of the title of Queen Mother than our sister and elder in Islam, Queen Mother Aisha Adawiya.
So, my earliest memories of Sister Aisha, I remember just looking at her and all of this beauty emanating from her. And I just remember her having this really beautiful voice, and it was very comforting.
It was probably at the Schomburg. I lived in the Schomburg. I always wanted to sleep in the Schomburg, right? And that's where I first saw her, and she was such a figure there, you know. Hers was what I used to think when she came towards you, you know, a walk and a look that was heavenly on many levels, you know.
I mean, people need to have some record of what happened. You know, what have we done? Have we made a difference? Someone was saying they were doing these projects and stories, and how do you measure your importance in the world or whatever? It's like, what would the world look like without you in it, you know? It's like, wow, that's a heavy question, you know. But what difference did you make? You know, what good, what benefit did you bring, if any? You know, so that's where we are now. But at least to chronicle stuff, you know, it's like, what have you done between 1944, when you were born, until now? You know, what happened? You know, I don't know how to slice that up, you know.
People get ready, there's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board.
My name is Aisha Adawiya. My town is Eufaula, Alabama. My mother worked nights, and my maternal great aunt raised us for the most part. And I remember my great aunt used to really pamper and spoil us, you know, because she didn't have any of her own children, so she really adopted me and just adored us, you know. I remember my father is really the one who gave me the permission to rebel against, you know, like the status quo in our community. We were, you know, conservative family, Black family, Christian, African Methodist Episcopal Church is where we grew up. He's talking about some of the hypocrisy, you know, in the community, that people present themselves as religious, you know, people on Sunday, but the rest of the week they do stuff, you know. So my father gave me permission to reject stuff, you know, and to talk back, you know. I was rebellious, so I was constantly leaving the city, right? I would never stay in my town because I wanted to do stuff, right? I think I graduated high school in 1961. and I left immediately, right? I lived with my aunt for a very brief time in Brooklyn, right? But already I was, I was out of the barn, as it were, it was gone. So I lived with my aunt for a very short time in Brooklyn and somehow found my way to Greenwich Village, Yeah.
Did you ever sing this?
Yeah.
This was one of your.
This is one of
Your
my
signature-
favorites.
signature
Yeah,
songs?
yeah. Singing was my calling. And when I try to look back and remember my childhood and growing up, that is the only thing that resonates with me, even now. So for some reason, I was attracted to jazz. I mean, that's what resonated with me so deeply.
What else?
Oh, there's a lot.
Give me some other.
Give me some other.
Beautiful.
It's amazing.
She was a singer, that she wanted to sing, whatever. And I'm sure that was what was so important to her, to have that music. But I'm also sure too that she at some particular point heard. You cannot listen to the work that Coltrane and Monk and company did without feeling that you were in church coming full circle.
I never was doing stuff on my own. I would find opportunities to do background stuff with musicians who were, doing their own gig and they wanted a background singer, so I would join, that kind of stuff. But always in my heart, I wanted to sing, There was, this band was playing, and I lived in Brooklyn at the time. And I went there, and what was his name? Curtis Mayfield was there performing, right? And I was just a starry-eyed kid, it's just like, just craving, to be on the stage, And I don't know, for some reason he saw me, right? So he just said, come up, petrified. I mean, like, it's like a deer in the headlights. It's like, oh my God. Not only did he see me, but he asked me to come up and sing. And I did, I don't know what song or any of that, I just remember being on stage singing with this band, Curtis Mayfield, of God's sake, Oh, wow.
If the leaders of the nonviolent movement can go into the white community and teach nonviolence, good. I go along with that. But as long as I see them teaching nonviolence only in the black community, then we can't go along with that. We believe in equality, and equality means you have to put the same thing over here that you put over here.
I used to cut my hair very short, right? And when I came to New York, my aunt said to me, oh, there's a barber down the street, so you can go there and get your hair trimmed, right? Now, my aunt was a very devout Christian, really beautiful soul. So my aunt, who knew that these people on the corner, though, were members of the Nation of Islam, right? These were brothers, who had a barbershop on the corner right down the street from where my aunt lived, right? This tells me that she trusted them enough to send her niece there, to get my hair done. So I was like, fresh meat, yeah, come on in, And, they introduced me to Malcolm's teachings, They would take me places, to hear the minister talk, you know. Every time there was an opportunity to hear him talk or wherever they would take me, I went, you know. And it was amazing, you know, the message. So it spoke again to my spirit of resistance, you know.
Our dear sister was listening to Malcolm. Our dear sister heard Malcolm. This man was imparting information to all of us as to how you survive, how you live, you know, how you function, you know, how you could defend yourself, right? You know, that you were indeed a person who needed to defend oneself.
We are peaceful people. We are loving people. We love everybody who loves us. But we don't love anybody who doesn't love us. We're nonviolent with people who are nonviolent with us. But we are not nonviolent with anyone who is violent with us.
You know, I found permission to defend myself as a Muslim, right? That was part of Malcolm X's message for me, you know, that I could struggle in an ethical way, you know, in a religious way, you know. That was very powerful for me, still is powerful for me.
Remember that we would all be sitting around that little tiny television watching him, and he destroyed every PhD there. It was such amazing, and what it taught us is that we could do that too. You got to hear that, right? You know, I mean, if he could speak out like that, why can't we? Because most people, most blacks didn't speak out.
Do you consider yourself militant? I consider myself Malcolm.
So that's the Malcolm that our dear sister saw. That is why she began to look at the nation. That is why she began to probably move out of the church. You know, I don't know if she continued church, but she came north, right? That was an amazing, amazing moment in her history, you know, how people began to come in, you know, to the temple, to the mosque, you know, to listen to this man. So every place he went, many of us always, we never told each other we were going, but when we got there, we saw each other, right?
I was always on a spiritual journey, searching for something to fill that void, right? And of course, I grew up in the church, you know, I was in the church choir and all of that. I was a good Christian girl, you know. Something was missing, you know, and I was searching. So I like to say that I didn't find Islam, you know, Islam found me. I never joined the Nation of Islam, but I followed Malcolm's talks and his teachings, right? And I still see Malcolm as my teacher, you know, above everyone else, quite frankly. By the time I took Shahada, I was already Muslim. It was just a formal declaration that, you know, I'm Muslim now, you know. That came after Malcolm was assassinated. But before that, I had started to change my lifestyle, you know, completely. I went to the Islamic Center, the Islamic Cultural Center of New York. 72nd Street and Riverside Drive is where it's located. I call that the landmark building. That's where I went and took my Shahada with the Sheikh Suleiman Dunya, who became like a father for me. This is where Malcolm took his Shahada, and all of his family, his children went there to study Islam with the rest of us, and his wife, Dr. Betty Shabazz. So it was a rich, beautiful experience. And I loved, you know, this environment. I was learning from Muslims from all over the world, really. And I love that. I call it the garden, you know, the flower garden. Dr. Shabazz used to come every Sunday, like clockwork, to bring the children to the Islamic Center for their Islamic studies, right? A friend of mine was sitting next to this woman that I didn't know, but she asked me, well, what brought you to Islam, right? And to this day, I still don't know why I said what I said, but I said, I'm just following Malcolm, you know. And so my friend turned to this lady beside her and said, well, meet Mrs. Malcolm X, right? And she said, Salam, right? And that was the beginning of our relationship that lasted up until her death. Yeah.
Look at you. I haven't seen your face in so long and you look so pretty. Yes, indeed. I know. Just for you, just for you. Every single Sunday, without fail, my mother brought all 6 of her daughters to the mosque for as long as I can remember. And we would come running in the front door and go up all of these stairs that went around and around and around. And first we would have Arabic classes. So we were learning how to read and write Arabic. And then we would learn about the Quran. Alif, Ba, Ta, Tha, Jim, Ha, Ka, Do, Tho, Ra, Zan, Sin, Shin, Ain, Gain, Twan. Yes, of course. And then, of course, the Al-Fatiha and the, just so many different prayers. What I remember most, what stands out the most about Sister Aisha is when my mother was transitioning. And I remember she just emanated a lot of peace. And she would come and say, "Sweetheart, can I play some Quranic recitation for Mommy?" And it just sounded very angelic. It wasn't easy to look at my mother from what had happened to her. And for Sister Aisha to go willingly for so many hours and play it for her, my mother. I remembered it just being very peaceful and very soothing, and that it was selfless to go in the room and sit there with my mother and play. And so because of that, she means everything to me. And I don't think that there would be anything that she could ask that I would say no.
Oh, wow. MX. Where is this? Wow. Wow. Where is this?
It might be in Chicago.
No, she does. Right.
Thank you. Wicked.
I was this hidden friend of Dr. Shabaz's. As you know, your mom was very private about her religion, right? She was a private person. So I was the person that she chatted with about Islam, right? When we were in the hospital, someone said, she sure did keep you a secret, didn't she? Yeah. So we had our relationship, and it was private, and it's still private, There's just a lot, it's private, and it will be private, Yeah. I remember, this is at Barnard, though. I was telling you about the Muslim women's group that we had at Columbia, right? And we used to meet there at Barnard every Saturday, like clockwork. I mean, you could set your clock by it, When you enter Barnard, you pass the auditorium on the way to the elevator to go up to, I think it's the second floor, right? Where we would meet, right? And every time we passed, I know that I would have noticed that plaque that said, "This is the last place where it wasn't there. It was painted over. It just wasn't visible at all because Malcolm wasn't the hot item then. Nobody wanted to be associated with Malcolm X. So that was erased, right? And then I think it was after Spike's movie, that it appeared, right? The plaque wasn't there, and suddenly it's there, and now it's framed, So it's just, wow, amazing stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
That just goes to show the importance of participating in the narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Creating the narrative, changing the narrative, yeah.
Of the 8,000 tenants of small hotels, SROs, and old law tenements whom Columbia has systematically displaced, only a specially selected token number of minority group families now reside in Morningside Heights. We deplore this deliberate creation of a white ghetto.
Gentrification has really been devastating to the Harlem community. Columbia is, I think, a prime example of what it means, to destroy so much of the history of Harlem. Columbia was now taking over this area. Tearing down the Audubon was what they wanted to do. Why tear down the Audubon? This is sacred space because it's where Malcolm was assassinated. So no one should be allowed to touch that, even Columbia University. So there were demonstrations almost every day protesting Columbia's decisions to demolish the Audubon. But Dr. Shabazz intervened and said that she would accept Columbia's decision with the caveat that they should establish a Malcolm X medical scholarship.
Columbia at the time had a Malcolm X medical scholarship. And when my mother passed away, they had the Dr. Betty Shabazz nursing scholarship. And, at that time, I think I personally was too traumatized to continue those scholarships, but I think it would be great, to make sure that Columbia is continuing this work. People from around the world, they come to New York City. They want to see where was Malcolm X assassinated. They know that it was right next door to Columbia, that it was right across the street from Presbyterian Hospital. So it just seems like the perfect family, if you will, to continue the support that they, began when my mother was alive.
I visited Pakistan years ago alone to visit my husband's family. It was a wonderful time. And I fell in love with the Pakistani people, the culture. I went to stay with his sister in Islamabad, right? They were very gracious and loving. They would take me everywhere. I have photographs of going to these gardens, these incredible gardens that they had. And everybody wanted to bring me home, come, let us, dinner or lunch or whatever, The hospitality was really overwhelming, right? I mean, I fell in love with the people. Aziz used to tell me, there are people in Pakistan who look like you, right? And when he would tell me these stories, I want to know more because I'm now working at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, right? And so if you're telling me that there are Black people who are descended from Africa, right, living in Pakistan, I wanted to know about that. So, and he would go back and forth to Pakistan regularly, right? So I would ask him, bring me something so I can see who they are, bring me a photograph or something. He was able to contact an elder there who gave him a beautiful document that says who they are and, when they were established, and, a beautiful little document. So I had that on my desk for a very long time at the Schomburg Center. They used to laugh at me, in fact. Oh, she likes this music? And she doesn't even speak the language. Oh, boy. I was involved with the Muslim Students Association at Columbia. Initially, I was affiliated with the Muslim women's group at Columbia University, and were called Sisters in Islam. And this group was comprised primarily of Muslim women from various countries who had come either to study at Columbia University or they were married to men who were studying at Columbia. And so that was the nucleus of our group. And of course, these women affiliated themselves with the local community, meaning us, who were not students at Columbia, but we were members of the Muslim community. So the MSA at that time, was vibrant. And of course, we're talking something much before 9/11, when everything changed for young students coming, especially from abroad, right? So the MSA was the thing, We could have all kinds of programming on campus there, and they often facilitated space for us to do the kind of programs that we wanted to do, unencumbered, right? So, and we meaning the local community, had the opportunity to share our experiences and our resources, right, with students who were coming from other countries who were not familiar with the local scene, right? So that became our work and our joy, to share with them. And they wanted to be a part of the community, which was very beautiful, because then you had the cross-fertilization, right, that was happening there in a very powerful way, And Columbia was the site of all of that taking place. So I see Columbia very much as I see the Islamic Cultural Center at 72nd Street and Riverside Drive, right? Only this was in an academic setting. But in this mix, they were able to combine the academics and the cultural, right? The local, it was like this stew that was so rich and beautiful, really. Yeah. We could invite people like Ali Mazrui. I mean, Ali Mazrui was a prominent scholar, internationally known, and he would come at our invitation, to Columbia. And he came. But what happened was we couldn't get a room. They wouldn't allow us a room. I think this was when Salman Rushdie was under attack for one of the books that he published. And we wanted to talk about this, what is free speech, right? Now, Ali Mazrui went to Columbia University. He agreed to stand in front of the library, outside on the steps. Can you imagine Ali Mazrui to do his talk, standing outside on the steps in front of the library? So that was Ali Mazrui at Columbia University.
Anti-war protesters spilled beyond the 2-block-long zone marked off for them by police barricades Despite a steady rain, they kept chanting and shouting their opposition to the Bush administration's war policy in the Middle East. Protesters at least a block from the Hilton, it is quite likely Mr. Bush made it in and out of New York City without ever seeing or hearing the anger that filled 6th Avenue because of his visit.
I always found myself in communities that were fighting, you know. And so the anti-war movement was one of those things that I felt called to be a part of. So yeah, we were demonstrating against those wars. Obviously, there were lectures about that. And again, MSA was that place at Columbia where we could have those conversations. I mean, a spot, you know, a room where you could call people together to have these conversations, right? I mean, you know, you didn't have a Schomburg Center to get a room to talk about these things, you know. But you could do that at Columbia through the MSA. But after 9/11, when students were targeted, you know, where agents were, you know, planted in communities to either set up students, to track them, and we find out that they're agents. We found out these things after 9/11, right? That the government, you know, our government were implanting, you know, people in the community. So many people were victimized, you know, through entrapment. So we were holding demonstrations.
Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop.
I continued to come over the years to attend activities at SEPA on various issues in the world that I was already involved in. The programs that were happening there were bringing a lot of people that ordinarily would not come, you know, to academic discussions. But because these programs resonated in the community and the community of activists around social justice issues, I valued the place, so I often came, you know. My community at Columbia with the Muslim women's group, Sisters in Islam, was really wonderful, and it fed me a lot because I was satisfying that need to make connection with people from other cultures, and not just women or men for that matter, in the United States and the American culture in that context. So I always loved that. So they provided that. But at some point I was called to speak about some of the atrocities that were happening, not just in the world, but atrocities that were happening right here at home in the United States. The impetus for creating Women in Islam was in response to the war in Bosnia and the rape atrocities specifically that were impacting Muslim women in Bosnia at that time. And at the time, I didn't see Muslim women or Muslim communities mobilized around that issue. So I felt the need to say something, you know. There was no space for women to do this work in Muslim organizations. You know, we were still bound by these cultural norms that prioritize culture over Islamic principles in terms of how women were to interact in public, right? So we were very clear, you know, that we were going to do the work, we were going to fight, we were going to struggle.
I will say that I just understood that there were women in this struggle, right? And there were women who had so much to say, and women contributed a great deal to the struggle here in a place called America, that it has taken a long time, for that to be seen and heard by people.
My work at the United Nations began around my involvement with the genocide that was taking place in Bosnia. We're just now breaking ground with the feminist movement and religious communities in general, not to mention Muslim communities, But we have to stake out our territory and say we are Islamic women and we believe in the liberation of women, right? And not just Muslim women, but women in general, right? So this became part of the work. And, I would show up at the UN because people were preparing for the Beijing conference that was taking place. And we said, no, well, we want to have a voice too, How do we enter these conversations, So we'll walk into a meeting that was being organized, and people were aghast, like, who are these women coming in headscarves, not just headscarves, but full hijab, So there was not, the welcome mat was not there for us, So you had to force your way into the room and into the conversation. We understood that you can only do so much within the UN framework, and you had to get in the streets, right? You have photographs of a lot of those rallies that I organized to fight against, I would say, U.S. imperialism, and that, the war against Iraq was powerful and prominent, and there was a massive resistance to this war, right? There was a lot of mobilization and anti-war movement against what was happening in Palestine. Palestine has always been, something that was powerful in our movement, in our work, right? La Maison Française. I used to go there regularly to hear Edward Said talk, and I admired him. Certainly he was a Palestinian American, but his critique, about imperialism, and in a literary sense, it was something unique, for us as well, to hear this man talking about these things from this perspective, because we were in the streets, just demanding stuff happen. So to have this other entree, to people who were speaking about this at a high academic level, that was something unique. So I admire Edward Said for that, yeah.
I always put her with Queen Mother Moore, right? That every time I saw her, I always thought of Queen Mother Moore also too, because of the great influence they had on women. She was teaching on a different level here. She was holding up in the mosque, right? The idea that women had a voice also too. And the thing that I would say about women like Idea's sister is that for all those years, she walked a holy walk, down a holy road, that people knew they could depend on her, that this was a sister, who would go in and demand that sisters be heard, right? That we're here, but we need to be heard also too. Our voices are equally as important as the men's voices, right? And that's a great role that she played, and sisters saw that and followed her as a consequence. Yeah.
I'm passionate about discrimination against women in our religious spaces, the mosques, right? So, yeah, I'm very passionate about that. So, and I know that there is a movement now where, because people are just frustrated, and it's painful, it's traumatic, to have to go through all of that devaluing in religious spaces, and especially when outside, other people see you for who you are, they respect your expertise, what you bring to the table, and then you're diminished the minute that you enter the mosque. I mean, that's just totally unacceptable, and we just quite simply can't stand for it, So we have to constantly fight that, not create second and third spaces, or we have to own it, and it's a struggle, but we have to do that. Yeah, so that's something very close to my heart. Yeah.
The activity of African American Muslim women and non-African American or immigrant Muslims.
Do I see
a distinction between the level of activity and the involvement of African American women and then the Muslim women from the immigrant communities?
Well, again, my circle is very different, you see. I mean, the women that I interact with from wherever they come from are activists. So well, the Black Muslim female experience is varied, widely varied. We came from different pathways to Islam, right? And that in itself says a lot about who we are, how we grew up as, and especially as people who embraced Islam, coming from primarily Christian backgrounds, right? So that experience, many people that we knew, they were turned away from their families because they embraced Islam, right? We were looking for liberation, and Islam provided, that thing for us. And of course, we came into a lot of stuff that was really not deeply related to Islam, but we were searching for liberation, and for a spiritual grounding that fed us, because as a Black woman, you are constantly facing challenges all day, every day. As a Black Muslim woman, you are certainly doing that as well. So you become like on the front lines, And I think Black Muslim women led the pack in this regard, that we were still going to be who we were, living in this culture as Africans in the Americas, but that we were Muslim. And we wanted people to know that we were Muslim, I think that we are path breakers. Yeah, so we're soldiers, we're, still.
So what I learned of Sister Aisha's activism was mainly during the time of the memorial celebrations that she spearheaded, and they were held at the Schomburg. Many of the women that Sister Aisha had identified to be the primary recipient of the Betty Shabazz Award was women like Winnie Mandela, who was one of my heroes. So she identified some really heavy hitters, and then I found out that not only was she able to identify these heavy hitters, these women, these iconic women, but that she was also one of these iconic women who they equally respected. And it was because of her work in Islam. It was because of her work for women, for people of the diaspora, for people in Islam, And so it wasn't long after that she too became one of my heroes, Sister Aisha.
I mean, I come from this background of struggle, you know, being a Black person born and raised in the South, you know, in a very segregated South. I've always been called to the front lines, you know. I feel that I didn't choose this, but I was called to this, so I call it a life calling. And I was able to follow that thread, you know, those breadcrumbs, you know, from a very early age. So that's how it all started, you know. There have been many communities over time, and there continue to be more communities added because I thrive in those environments. I like reaching out to other people from different backgrounds, different cultural traditions. I thrive on that. So, and each one has been a blessing, really. What have you done between 1944, when you were born, until now? You know, what happened? You know, I don't know how to slice that up, you know.
Well, to the question, what difference did you make? What have you brought, you know, to the community?
Mm.
What would you answer?
I would say profound love. I would say that. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that.
Les fruits bien mûrs au goût de miel. Ma vie, Aïcha, si tu m'aimes. Aïcha, Aïcha, écoute-moi. Aïcha, Aïcha, t'en vas pas. Aïcha, Aïcha, regarde.